Hello and welcome to Astral Express Chat, a Honkai Star Rail podcast. This is your host Brent and I'm joined by my co-host Zane.
Hello, welcome back.
Another week more grind. And this week we've got sort of a special idea that both Zane and I came up with. Basically because we want to give it another week with the new patch before we talk about it.
Yeah, we don't want to give spoilers.
Alright Zane, so what's our special idea that we're doing?
Our special idea is, what sorts of things do we think could be cool inclusions for the game?
Yeah, sort of like a what could be.
Yes. Or a ponder this.
Are we both just coming up with titles?
Yes.
For the episode?
Yes.
Alright, let's keep going. Could this happen?
A question mark.
Just a question mark?
Just a question mark.
Maybe it should be...
Are we not going to keep talking about the actual thing now?
Okay, fine. I got sidetracked. Anyways, yeah, we both came up with some ideas of potential mechanics, concepts, content.
Character ideas or shells.
Just some ideas for the game that we had. And, you know, maybe Hoyoverse is listening. And they hit us up in our email and are like, hey, we like your idea. We're going to give you money for how great that idea was.
Or just, hey, I'm going to implement your idea, period.
Well, yeah, okay, actually.
Just even that is...
That would actually be even cooler, because then it'd be like...
Yeah.
Alright, I take it back. That'd be the coolest thing.
Just simply getting these in the game would be a treat,
yeah,
right?
You're right.
Because, I mean, I think lots of people would hopefully like these sorts of things, so...
Yeah, that would be cool.
Would you like to,
I will kick it off, because I think I have more than you.
Yes, I think you've got one more, so...
Alright, so this is an idea I talked about on our last episode, and it was the idea of dungeons within the game, and I'll go and explain this further because it could easily be mixed up with Sim Universe, because Sim Universe is sort of like a dungeon run.
Yeah, I think everyone's like initial reaction to adding a dungeon to the game is like, wait, don't we already have one?
Right,
in Sim Universe?
We do, in a way, but what I'm thinking is more of something that's like in the way of like Ep.4 is only 3 attempts per week. This would be 1 attempt per week. Mm-hmm. It'd be longer. And it wouldn't be something where you get buffs for your characters as you go. It would sort of be like just a dungeon in the overworld where it's just your team and there's no extra buffs and whatnot.
Right, so almost like a bridge between, you know, your MOC really difficult content and your Memories of War.
Right, you mean Echoes of War?
Echoes of War, yeah, Echoes of War bosses.
I guess it would...
So, like, not true, like, hardcore grind content, but, like, also a test of, like, your team has to be at least operating on a certain capacity.
Well, my thought is, like, it would have to be hard enough. What I keep thinking of is raids from Destiny. Mm-hmm. And, like, those, like, you would have to set those up. And, like, maybe, like, dungeons from World of Warcraft, even. Yeah, and then those, you sort of, like, you just, like, you get a team prepared. Granted, this is with multiple people, but you have multiple characters.
Right.
And it's something that's long and it's not fast. And the rewards at the end are really good.
Almost to segue into my thing, but, like, multiple people could almost, like, participate in this. Like, each person clears, like, a certain thing, and then once all of you clear, like, this component, then you unlock the final boss that, like, each of you get to deal some damage to, and when someone finally takes it out, you all get, like, a reward, sort of.
I mean, yeah, that would kind of work. I feel like that's almost a different idea in of itself.
Or are you thinking more of, like, a solo?
Yeah, more of, like, a solo. Because something I find with Sim Universe that I wish existed is that I just wish that it was longer sometimes. Like, I wish as the worlds got on, they, like, hit a gap or they hit a point where it was, like, only 13. Like, only 13, like... individual stages.
Right.
I was hoping it would get longer and feel like more of a journey. Mm-hmm. And not something you just blow through really fast.
So, but you don't want the blessings from Sim Universe, right? Because the goal of it was to
really test your
like
team.
The way that it actually is.
And the way that MOC makes you test your team, I want this to test your team.
Right.
Too.
It's just like a different test, right? Because MOC is how fast can you...
Right.
And reliably can you clear something.
I think this would be more along the lines of how well can you survive.
Mm-hmm. Because it's going to be a more grueling fight, right? Mm-hmm. As opposed to like a quick fight. Okay. I could see that. Kind of like MOC in terms, instead of killing content quickly, it's about surviving.
Right.
That's a cool way of putting it.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll segue into my next idea, which could kind of work on that intermediate point we were talking about, which is guilds. Okay. I think everyone loves to be a part of guilds where, you and your buddies can kind of contribute resources to each other. Mm-hmm. I know in like Clash of Clans and stuff, there's like guilds and you can donate troops and they can be used to like help attack people. Like you can drop your clan flag and like extra troops come out. I don't know that necessarily works here.
I think clans will work.
I think guilds could work, but I think the way that you start doing things that interact with people is you start having like these boss fights that are too difficult for one team to ever be able to beat it on its own.
Yeah.
And, it's like a weekly thing, and everyone in your guild can do it once, and then when it finally gets beat, everyone gets a reward based on, like, how much damage they did, or, like, whatever. Maybe not even how much damage they did, just everyone who participated gets a reward.
Well, yeah, that sort of makes me think of this idea of, like, world bosses, where it's, like, it's way too much for one person to beat. And it's mainly just to incorporate multiple people taking on the same thing at once.
Correct. Or the other way you can do it is something that everyone could beat at first. Kind of like, there's like a quantum weak boss. So you send the person in your guild who's got like a really built Scylla after them. And then you've got like a lightning weak boss, and your Jing Yuan user goes and fights them. And then your Wind weak boss, and the person who's built Blade goes and fights them, or Dong Hong, or whoever goes and fights them. And then once you beat all of these bosses, you unlock a final boss. Okay. And that boss is too hard for everyone to beat on their own. But everyone chips away at it and eventually beats it or something.
Huh. Yeah. I think
there's a few different ways
you could do that. There's some things you would have to, like, figure out, but the idea is interesting.
And then I guess the other thing you could do is, like, request ascension materials for so like the materials you get from killing like the basic units in the game all the time, because I know you've got 70,000 of them.
Yeah, I've got a ton of that.
But you could kind of like request for people who are getting into the game or whatnot for people to kind of pass stuff around.
Yeah,
but
I don't think the passing materials around is too much of a thing. Yeah. I don't think it would help, but so
I don't know that it would be necessarily helpful either.
Because, like, if someone's putting up purple items, they're not going to want anything else but, like, purple items.
Yeah, and I don't know that would actually happen.
And, like, the only reason I could see that semi-working is, like, if you have new players that are requesting, like, lower-grade materials, there'd have to be some sort of, like, reward for the upper players to actually, like, give them. So, like, whether or not that'd be a different form of currency. Or, like, I know in other games they do, like friend points, essentially.
Yeah, I could see it either being, like, its own guild currency or just giving you some credits for it. And it lets you kind of cash some of them out.
Yeah, okay. Credits would probably be a fine
But either way, I could see maybe that could be something. Like I said, that's not necessarily the important part. The important part is you get people together to do some sort of, like, weekly event that people want to do, or Mahoyo can throw out some events that have to do with guilds and stuff.
That'd be cool.
But you've got like a guild chat,
and like that kind of makes me think of like maybe like a guild event light cone. Not character, because I highly doubt they would do a specific
They wouldn't do characters.
But we've seen them do event lycons.
Yeah, and there could be like... Wolf one. Right, exactly. And they could do like a guild event, and part of the event is you get like this cool light cone. And I mean, obviously it's not going to be like the world's most broken light cone ever, but I mean, before the tutorial mission starts is really good.
It's really,
one of the most solid 4-star light cones we've gotten in the game.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cracked, so...
Yeah. Alright, then I'll go with another idea. The idea I had was something in other games that I played before. And the idea is, boss rushes. Essentially, because this game is naturally going to get more and more bosses. So, like, we've already seen with this patch a new boss. You haven't seen it yet, but there is one. Once there gets to a point where there's a ton of bosses, you just have you just create like a boss rush thing that people can do, and they have to fight every single boss in a row. And they cannot die, and if they die at any point, if all their characters die during it, then they have to start over.
So you'd start with the...
You would start with the destruction thing.
Right, that guy. And then you'd move on to Cocolia.
Yeah. And then I think the boss now.
The one that I haven't seen yet, so no spoil. Well, I know what they look like.
I
know what they look like, but yeah, that's an interesting... That almost would also be one of your dungeon gruely test of endurance things, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting thought, though. Would you get like a reward for it, or is it just like a complete to kind of do it and get an achievement?
I would assume there'd have to be. This is again where I would think like, oh, event Lycone. That's like the only thing that comes to mind. Or like maybe, I don't know. It'd have to be with these things that I'm like dungeon and this. There'd have to be some type of reward that's different enough and good enough to make people say, oh yeah, I'll actually do that. Because otherwise everyone's just going to ignore it because no one wants to do that.
Because otherwise you're like me who waits till the last minute. Or
right, unless you put like a ton of gems at the end, like a whole temple at the end.
They're not going to do that, but...
Right, but if they did, it would get people to do it.
Yeah, I mean, people would definitely do it. But I guess then it's kind of a one and done thing.
True. But they kind of are anyways.
Are they? Okay.
With boss rushes, it's more like you do it once and then it's kind of like... There's not really a point to doing it again.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting idea, though. I don't know how it would work from a logistics perspective, per se, or I think what the incentive would be.
I don't think it would work amazing in this game, but it's an idea because of the fact that they're going to have so many bosses. It gives... them a way to utilize all their bosses as they keep going.
Right, outside of the...
outside of, like, being one and done and then just Echoes of War. Because, over and over obviously, if the game gets bigger and more characters get if there's more and more bosses, you're going to be fighting the same couple bosses less and less and less and less.
Right, because, I mean, realistically here, every new area is going to have its own Echoes of War, right?
Right, each
and its
new,
own
planet.
World boss.
Yeah.
And as the new characters come out and they keep releasing new ones, they're going to use the newer and newer Echoes of War.
Right.
And eventually you'll just leave good old Cocolia and the destruction thingy-mabobby-boo behind.
Yeah.
In the dust.
Essentially you won't need them anymore.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
My next one's more of a conceptual idea, which is the addition of some new elements. I have on here, like, light and dark.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, it could be really anything. I think adding new elements is one of the ways that they could bring in some new play styles on how characters could work.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's two ways they could do it, right? Way one is they bring in new elements, and way two is they bring in new paths.
Right.
I mean, we've already seen from, like, their giant, like, production trailer that kind of like Genshin had, where they laid out kind of what's going to happen in a lot of the chapters, like acts. We've kind of seen one that has like they listed a whole bunch of new paths.
Have they done that for this game?
I don't know if they necessarily laid out everything that's going to happen, but it kind of had the same like feel of like,
wait, where
here's
is
like this giant... Have you not seen this?
No, I don't think I have.
Hold on.
What?
Let me pull this
Wait,
up.
what? I didn't know this existed. Hello, this is Brant coming to you from Post-Production Place. Zane and I decided to watch the video here, so sorry for this little cut, but it's copyrighted, so we can't really put that in. Anyways, I'll get back to the podcast. Just know that we watched this video. Okay, I'm just gonna say we're gonna have to cut that audio.
Oh yeah.
Because it's copyright.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have to cut all of that.
That seemed more like it was conceptual, just like showing all the Aeons.
It's showing that, but then like they also showed a whole bunch of other ones, right? So like they're alluding to the fact that there could be more out there than we're seeing.
I see what you're saying. I thought you were saying there was a whole like plot for all the stories.
No, so Genshin, what Genshin did is Genshin gave us a video that basically said, this is the order of worlds we're gonna, like, of areas we're gonna visit, and the Archon order that we're gonna go in, and then they displayed a couple characters for each of those zones that 100% were gonna come out in each of those zones.
Oh.
So it didn't make, it's kind of like that video where it didn't make a whole lot of sense upright, but like every time one of these areas has come out and the Archon quests have finished, another piece kind of clicks into place, and it kind of shows that they have like these overarching plans for like years of story already written that they can already interweave and kind of give hints to without actually giving anything away. And then when you come back and look at some of the things, you're like, there it is. But basically, the idea is you either add new elements or new paths.
Right.
Which this video that Brant hadn't seen,
I did not know that
he just saw, kind of at the end it goes through all of the different eons, right?
Yeah.
And then it starts showing adds in new ones and like new words that like could be essentially be associated with each of them.
Right.
So it kind of alludes to the fact that there's paths, and I also had read somewhere, I think, that there's some paths that supposedly had like died. And I think that paths can die
in the game, eons can die.
Right. So if like the eon dies, the path dies. So it kind of like alludes to the fact that like their eons could potentially be like born, die.
They do. They get born, they die.
Right. So there's definitely the possibility of them adding in new paths.
I think it's more likely that we'd see new paths over new elements.
See, I feel like we could see both though, right? Because we could go to a world and then all of a sudden this new element exists.
True. Yeah.
And it's because, I mean, don't get me wrong, the 7 we have now are great. Yeah. And Mihoyo loves their numbers of 7. There's 7 elements in Genshin. There's 7 places in Genshin. They love 7.
Yeah.
But I think that's a way they could potentially add in like a new level of complexity to the game, right? Is they add in this element that then changes the intricacies of everything and could spice everything up. The ones I had, like I said, are light and dark.
Yeah.
Because those are like common polarities with each other. Where like, if you have a light element on your team, you can't have a dark element. Yeah. Or if you have a dark element, you can't have a light. So like it like warps your team. Like you can have one of them on your team and only one.
Yeah.
And then it like almost converts your team to like the light or dark side.
That is an interesting mechanic. I would be really interested to see if that became a thing.
I don't know. And maybe they follow like their own exclusive path, and like this one path like has this thing where like you can only use one of them, and they change your team in some way by having them on your team.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah. But it's just a thought.
Okay. Well, I guess
now that I've thrown you
on
for
that
a loop.
note, I actually wrote this down right before we started. An idea I had was like, what if we see some form of playable eons? Okay. I don't know how the heck that would work. It'd probably be more likely that we'd see like servants of eons become playable, not the eons themselves, but something where it's like a direct link to the eon, not just someone who follows the path, someone who is like heavily involved with the eon in the path.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work. I mean, obviously, like, the closest thing I have for comparison is Genshin, right? Because I played that. And, you know, all of the Archons will become playable in that game, which are kind of equivalents, but, I mean, I feel like Eons are more of the equivalency of celestial beings in Genshin, and I don't think those will ever be playable, but I don't know that for sure. Who knows? I can imagine that the Eons would be, but I definitely, I mean, there could be like, the Archons, there's all... I'm not going to pretend like I understand Genshin lore on a high level, because I definitely don't. But, I mean, the Archons, have the Gnosis, which is different than the... I don't know. The things that the people have that give them their powers... Vision. There it is. Vision.
What?
Visions are the names of the things that give the people in Genshin that wield them their elemental abilities.
Oh, okay.
So it's like a different sort of thing, and like in the characters, it normally shows the vision on the corner of like the character screen. For the Archons, it actually shows a Gnosis as opposed to a vision. Like it actually says it. So it is possible to get like a different quote-unquote caliber of character.
Right. That's more like take the characters we have now, it's more like a god character, essentially.
Right, exactly.
That serves as like a higher being.
Right, and ironically enough, in Genshin, most of the time, the Archons, in fact all of them, are supportive units for their class. None of them are like the carry units. And, I mean, they do it, I think, primarily to make it so that they're less power creepable.
Right.
But it is interesting because it's supposed to like summarize everything the class could do from like a supportive standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And so we could get like this like higher being that's like, I don't know how you do it necessarily with the paths, because the paths are a little bit more linear, because like Hunt is single target DPS. How are you going to get a supportive single target DPS unit? But I don't know.
I think they would have to branch out paths before they would branch out elements.
I would think so.
Adding extra paths adds way more options.
Combinations.
Because then you could do like extra path, and now we make a character from each class in that path.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, conversely, you add an extra element, and now you get every single character from every path. So it branches the same way. The map stays the same.
Right. I don't know.
At least for adding one, I think. Don't know. But either way, it's very interesting. And like you said, it is interesting to ponder the idea of, like, we could potentially get some of these more celestial type beings that we haven't even seen yet, really. Yeah.
And it could...
if they even exist.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an...
I mean, because we know the Eons exist, but we don't necessarily... I don't know anything besides that.
That they exist?
Oh, I don't know if there's lesser celestial beings that exist.
Oh, right, yeah, we don't know. I'm sure this is probably something that's answered in the Honkai Impact 3rd, I would assume.
I don't know. Yeah,
because they're related. Maybe there's an answer in there. I don't know.
Yeah, neither of us have played that game, so don't flame us in the review section for not knowing Honkai Impact 3rd lore or my terrible Genshin Impact lore.
Oh, gosh.
But, should we move on to my next idea?
Yeah, go for it.
Alright, my next idea. If any of you are Xenoblade Chronicles 2 fans, I love Morag, and she's a dodge tank. So I really want them to bring a dodge tank to Star Rail, because I absolutely love the idea of a tank who actually like deals damage, and like their whole defensive utility is the fact that they just say, I'm just not going to take damage at all because I'm just going to dodge.
Yeah.
And it's quite satisfying, might I add. Now, I don't know how broken that would be in this game.
Yeah, because we haven't seen any kind of dodge mechanic.
Right, because it doesn't exist, period, right now. So this would be like...
It would be a brand new
character's own very unique mechanic.
I would assume if they end up doing something like this, they would add enemies that also have this feature at the same time.
Potentially.
Sort of like how we're seeing new enemies with this patch.
Right, but I don't know. But I guess the thought is it would probably be either a destruction or a preservation unit. Probably destruction, right? Because it's more, the dodge tank is more along the lines of like an offensive unit. Like they're offensive, but they're defensive, which kind of perfectly fits destruction. But it's basically just like a unit who builds high speed and attack. Mm-hmm. And their speed lets them evade attacks, and then they deal okay damage back. Like, they don't deal quite DPS levels of damage, but they deal pretty good damage.
They do enough damage to where they're better than just a flat-out defense character.
Right. But, you know, this is from JRPGs.
Right.
There's some content that if you get unlucky and they don't dodge...
Right.
They just get wiped.
Yeah.
So,
it's kind of risky...
It's not really risky. It's more risky than just running a solid tank. But it gives you more damage. But yeah, so that's kind of something I want to see.
Huh. Yeah. That'd be interesting. Alright, now I'll go over... These are two different ideas I had for different characters. So the first character idea I had was some sort of character that just steals speed from other characters. Mm-hmm. Either to make themselves go faster or have more power. Is something I thought about. Like, maybe a skill that's, like, leech all the speed from your other characters and gain, attack damage % equal to some amount of it.
Mm-hmm.
And just something where it's, like, you slow the rest of your team down for this one character just to, like, wham, just like absolutely, like just absolutely like destroy the enemies.
And I think you were talking about how there's some characters that already exist in the game that could potentially benefit from this, right?
Right. Specifically, I remember mentioning Luocha would be beneficial. If he gets his field out, it lasts 2 turns whenever he goes. So the slower he goes, the better. Which I've found there's occasions where like I'm using him and he gets imprisoned while having the field out, and the field will just last longer because he gets sent further back into the
turn order. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely an interesting idea, right? Because, I mean, there could be potentially more future characters who also benefit from going slower.
Right.
And it could kind of age well depending on what they release.
Well, like, another thing I'm thinking of is, like, something with Fire MC is that his effects for his, or I guess, the skill is it reduces damage until your next turn. If you don't have another turn for ages, he just sits there with a giant defense.
Taunting everybody with a giant damage reduction.
The taunt only matters so much. If he's going so slow, they'll all make it a turn.
Does it only taunt enemies for one of their turns?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, but I guess he'd still hold up the defense or the damage reduction.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting idea. I don't know how... We'll have to see. Cause
I think it could work.
It could. I think it would have to be the DPS unit, though, right?
It would have to. It would not make sense to be a support and yank your speed from your DPS.
Yeah.
That would not make sense. And then the second character idea I had was some type of character that, like, either swaps forms or just transforms in some capacity. That, like, either you use your skill and you transform or you use your ult and you transform.
Okay.
So it's, like, maybe it's something where, like, when you charge up the ult, you use it, you deal damage, and then you flip sides. And then the ult changes, the basic and the skill change.
Right.
And then the next time you use the ult, let's say it's like a DPS/support. So the next time the first time you use it, you deal damage, and your stuff is more focused around being DPS oriented. Then when you flip, all of a sudden now you're like support oriented. So like now you heal. Now you like your basic can do like a basic. And then when you use your ult again, you heal, you do like an AoE heal, and then you flop back to the damage side.
Interesting. So it's kind of like Luocha becomes even more of a damage dealer.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair.
It would be interesting. Cause
or like
it would more encourage you to just sit on your ult for like whenever the best chance is. Not just use it.
Right, it's almost like you want to time it
it for what you need.
Right, because if you want to have access to a DPS unit and you're on the DPS form, you might not want to necessarily use your ult because then you switch over. That's interesting.
Yeah.
While on the topic of characters, the last idea I had, because I don't have very many, is the idea of like a supportive unit who possesses a character and like enhances them in some way, shape, or form. So like the idea is they basically like completely disappear from like the turn order for a certain number of the other character that they possess as turns, and then they just like buff them to some degree.
And like I think this could work because we've seen that when characters get like, specifically with Svarog, when you take a character out of the turn order, their health bar still sits there. Like it's like they're still there. It's like they're almost imprisoned or like frozen where you can't use their ult. But they themselves, it's not like their health bar just disappears.
And they don't get hit from AoE attacks either.
No, it would prevent them from taking damage unless you make a sort of character that possesses, and then when it possesses onto someone, it takes the damage instead.
Right, which would be a different form of possession.
Right.
Interesting.
Support versus...
Right. Yeah,
defense.
There's a few different ways you could do it, I guess. Though I guess the defensive one is probably not as useful, potentially.
Probably not.
I mean, I guess it's interesting. Like on Clara, it could be good.
Right.
Because Clara wants to get hit, so then you just throw the defensive one on her, and now
what
there's
I'm thinking, though, is if it's more defense-oriented, you would have abilities that, like, benefit when that person gets hit. So, like, if they get hit, they also get this.
Okay.
Because you're on them.
Because you're
possessed
on them. Right. The interesting thing is it changes your whole skill point equation, right? Because you're using probably a skill point to do this. And then now they can't generate skill points anymore because they're gone. They don't even get a turn. So now all of a sudden you go from 4 active characters to 3.
Well, okay, now I have a question. Would this be something that's like permanent? Like once they're on someone they can't get off?
No, I think it would be something like they possess them for like 3 turns or something. 2 or 3
But
turns.
then how would their skill / ult work? If one of them possesses, then the other one just becomes like useless.
That's the intricacies we haven't worked out here.
Because I'm like, how would that work? I'm like, how does that
Maybe the ult is they possess all of your people.
Oh, well, that would be interesting.
They just everyone's one big happy family.
Yeah, I don't know,
but that's for Hoyo to figure out. I don't have to figure that one out.
Yeah.
Do you guys if you guys have any ideas, feel free to
like you said, do you?
Yeah.
Like you're asking them like
yeah, just respond back to us. Yeah, come on.
Tell us.
But if you guys have any ideas, free feel to email us at astralexpresschat@gmail.com.
Yeah, that's right. Email us. Or, I'll put up like a open-ended question in the Spotify or something if you want to put something there. Anyways, thank you all for listening this episode. We appreciate the continued support. Everything seems to be going on a good trend for growth-wise for the podcast, so that's always nice.
Yeah, we appreciate the support.
Yeah. Stay tuned. Next week, we'll talk about Even Immortality Dies.
Yeah, 1.2 stuff coming your way soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.